right, we are back in season 2 of Lifestyle Pirates. John, 1 year, mate. Congratulations. We've been doing this for 50 or more than 52 episodes. Will this be in 53?
Mate, thank you very much. And to you as well.
Mate,
did you think we'd get here?
Well, there's so many people I want to thank first. Did I think I'd get here? We would get here? No, I didn't think we would, actually. I knew we'd have legs, but I didn't know we'd still keep it up and do one a week, which is quite an achievement.
It's been awesome. I think for me, one of the things I've got out of it is just learning from so many different people from different walks of life, how they tackle their challenges, how they got into what they do. Some of the themes I think that have been really clear for me, though, is just having a community around you. And I know I bring this up every single week, most podcasts, but a lot of people tend to thrive, be happier, be more comfortable, be more confident. They tend to do better when they're surrounded by a community or network that are helping them do that.
Yeah, definitely. One of the takeouts that I got was that no two people are the same. You know, we spoke to such a diverse range of people over the year. It was really fascinating to hear everyone else's story. Yes, there are similarities in struggles or, you know, when you start out, your expectations when you start out, and sometimes they've not been exactly what you thought when you first start out. But yeah, it was really interesting to hear everyone else's journey, slightly tailored to them, but yeah, almost something common within them.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So this week we have the men's table.
Yeah, Ben and David. So I met Ben many years ago through some networking. I think for me, I'm keen to get out of this, you know, why there's a need for this men's community, and I guess how they're, you know, getting moving away from the stereotype of these kind of bravado men. You know, men tend to be fairly stoic in their approach and like to take things on themselves. I'm keen to see what kind of challenges that they're coming across and how they're overcoming that, and how this community is helping men, you know, around the table.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. Maybe I think about mental health a lot when it comes to, you know, the people around me, staff, friends, family, everything like that. So to see that there's, you know, people out there just having a chat, I think it's a great opportunity. Men don't talk enough, as all of us men know that. So it's really good to see someone actioning and getting a group of men together to talk feelings, talk everything, and yeah, not just football.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, I want to know how they all found each other as well. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to it. So, well, you can't tune out actually. This is a podcast, so stay tuned.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Lifestyle Pirates with me, Big J, and him, Adriano.
G'day.
We're joined this morning here by two gentlemen. We have the men's table, and this literally is a men's table this morning, joined by Ben Hughes and David Poynton, who are the founders of the men's table. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty well. It's a beautiful sunny morning.
It's a bit fresh outside. You were wrapped up this morning. Nice scarf and jumper when you came in.
I was. I've had my 2 coffees, but I'm still feeling a little bit.
Well, we have got water. We did have a guest that brought a 6-pack of beer, which is he's still my favourite.
Yeah,
but it's all good. It's all good.
So just I want to recognise as well that today is actually the very first episode of season 2. So welcome, gentlemen.
Wow.
Thank you.
There you go. 53 episodes.
Well done.
Awesome.
Congratulations, you, Squire.
Oh, thanks, mate. Thanks. I wasn't prepared for a speech, but now that you've asked,
So you have a tagline here called "Men Serving Men," which I think is a very interesting tagline, and obviously in keeping with the men's table. Talk to us about that.
Men serving men. Okay, so let's talk about what we do first of all.
Perfect.
We kind of get men together. We form communities of men where they celebrate the highs of their lives and they unburden themselves from the lows of their lives. And we form communities, and in a community, everybody looks after each other. So men serving men is really about men serving each other, you know, and it's a metaphorical.
That was easy for you to say.
That was no. Where's my
Let's
coffee?
get that 6 beers
Where
going.
is my coffee? It's about the table. Yeah. So everything we do, so David and I, we sit in the kitchen, for instance.
Yep.
We don't have a head office. We're here to serve the tables, and we play to our strengths. So I'm front of house and David is head chef. And so men serving men is really about men helping each other.
Awesome. Now, this kicked off in 2011. How did it originally come about with you guys being the co-founders? Was it a kind of trigger event for one of you, or what was the genesis of it?
Yeah. Well, as you were yourself, I was in a business networking thing called BNI. Life was pretty bad for me at that time. I wasn't very happy, self-employed. My head was going whoop over there due to a divorce and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of a meeting, I was talking to two guys and I was saying, oh, this is happening to me and I don't feel very happy. And they say the conversation turned a little bit darker. I can't remember that happening, but it might well have happened. And they just turned around to me and said, mate, know exactly how you feel. And I went, oh, hold on a minute. I hear a lot of this. And I thought to myself, why do I hear a lot of this? And it's probably because I'm pretty open. So people will know how I feel most of the time. It's either, well, not so much now, but it was either depressed or overexcited. Those are my two speeds. And I thought, what just happened here? And I realized I kind of made myself vulnerable. I'd opened the door and allowed them to walk through into that vulnerable space. And they just went, yep, this is what's happening for us. So the next week I stood up and I said, I'm going to start a men's group. Who's in? And we started meeting in Surrey Hills in Crown Street in a private room in a restaurant, and pretty much all small business owners, and talking about the highs and lows of our lives. And that's really kind of how it all started. And that table was going for about 7.5, 8 years or so. And then David gave me a call. I don't know, you might want to carry on from there, yeah.
Yeah, I'd been tapped on the shoulder by a female friend who was doing women's work, getting groups of women together. And she just said one day, what are you doing about men's work? I had no idea what I was doing about men's work. I hadn't even thought about it. But I, with Ben calling us in, but I also knew Ben had a real interest in men's mental health. I phoned him. I said, what are we doing about men's work? And we sat down, had a coffee in Stanley Street. Maybe there was another meeting before that in East Sydney. And then for 5 minutes, we tried to scheme up some grand idea. And then we're like, hang on a minute, we've got our men's table. Why don't we just take that out to others? So the next month we went back to our table and we said, we want to see if other men want to do this. Can we write down what has made this work? And we'd been consciously working our group into a functional, effective space. We'd had some Barneys, we'd had some big blues as a group, where things weren't working in the way we were trying to do it. But overall, we'd really created that sense of safety and a place of non-judgment where you could bring an open heart in and really be heard.
What were some of the Barneys? I've not heard that expression for years. Thank you. Oh, that brings back so many memories, doesn't it? That's a pommy term, isn't it, Barney?
Barney Rubble.
What were some of the blues, mate?
There was a couple of good ones, I guess. I mean, I know there was one about commitment. A couple of guys hadn't been showing up, for some months, or they were in and out a bit over a period of months. And, somebody put on the table, like, I'm really pissed off because I'm here every month and, some of the other guys aren't. What's going on? Who's committed? And that really caused quite a bit of ruction because people felt committed, but maybe they were busy or, just had other things going on. But we hadn't had the conversation about commitment, even though earlier on we had sort of said, are we in this for the long haul? And we'd decided, yes, we were. Let's grow old together. But then here we were down the track. It was 4 years in or something, and we were having a real conversation, well, a real blue around there's the Australian version, blue, of commitment. That was one topic. There was some others I can't remember right now. Ben might have another recollection of some others.
I do remember me. I had my finger out and I was going for it at somebody or other. So
because that would be a bit of a balance, right? Because you used a very poignant term, saying you let yourself be vulnerable. So because you've already done this thing for 3 or 4 years. You've then kind of connected with David and putting something together. But you would have done a lot of testing and made some observations when you were going on your journey there. So how do you balance that? Come on, guys, are we in this together or not? When everybody is trying to make themselves vulnerable, which is, I can imagine, maybe easier for people like you and I that I would say we're kind of extroverted against maybe introverts or people that are just going through different stuff. Like how do you crack the whip when you're trying to bring this safe space?
So one thing we don't do is we don't play into that male hierarchy thing where there's somebody in charge. So what we do is we set up a very level table where everybody has purpose in having ownership for the table. So if you fall into that traditional male thing of having the boss there or the chairman, and it doesn't work. So it was really about how this works, and we've seen it time and time again. Is if you're in a group of men and the first man to go gives you a deep dive into something, you know, that's playing on his mind, that something's really affecting him, a really vulnerable share, pretty much everybody else will follow. Okay, if some guy goes, oh yeah, you know, I'm an accountant, I'm middle management, and it's pretty shit, and my boss is a bit of a twat, and blah blah blah, it doesn't really work. But if some guy goes, this is something that happened to me, you know, I've never told anybody before, not even my wife, and blah, it will just follow around the table. So it's making everybody safe in that vulnerable space. You can't, and so it will take different time for, you know, different time for different people. Some people can do it straight away. Other people, it's like their heart's going like this. Yeah. So that, you know, but it's really important to be able to make it accessible for men to do that.
And are people, we'll come on to the rules of engagement. Actually, it's probably a nice segue. Are people allowed to try and solve the problem? Or is it, I must finish my event or my download or my sharing, and then it's like, right, no one's allowed to say anything? Like, what's the structure? Yeah,
it's more the latter. We've got a set of guidelines, which was that day we wrote down what have we, you know, done that has worked, and that's what now holds the tables. We call them the fundamentals, and then there's a safety net. These two things kind of are the structure, simple structure. And when we introduce them to new men at one of our entrees where they come to find out about it, we just go through it in sections, but there's a section there with 10 guidelines about how the conversation can flow. And we just kind of go, look, which one jumps out for you? You know, what questions have you got? Almost always they go, oh, number 6, no fixing. Oh, that one's going to be hard for me. And so we have a conversation with them about what you've just raised, which is that natural tendency to want to get in. There's a guy who's put his heart on his sleeve. He's going through shit. Let's sort him out. Let's get him some solutions, you know. But what we found and what we learned in our first table, and now we're seeing it in others, is that you're really downloading on something that you're going through. Normally, it's pretty complex. It's pretty emotional. There's not like a linear fix here. And here I am suddenly thinking, I've got it. I know how to fix John's issue. I don't know. I'm not in your shoes. I don't have a clue about all of the backstory or whatever. All I've got is my own version of what my brother-in-law did. We call it the brother-in-law story. Oh, you know, my brother-in-law had the same thing and he did this. And meantime, it's now over to me. I've taken away from your story. I've got the story now. It's essentially my share now. And you haven't even finished. Yeah. You haven't even got to the guts of it. So we really discourage that. We say, guys, it's listening. If the man at the end of his share says, okay, that's it, what advice have you got? What can I do? Have you had any experience like that? It's perfect. They can then, you know, jump in and get the advice. But otherwise, let the man share and let that be enough.
I've noticed on the website it says no judgment, no requirement to change, no experts and no jargon. What is it about this, and why do you feel it is so important to mention?
Well, currently we've been commissioned twice by the National Mental Health Commission to research this. So right now we're researching the benefit of peer support versus professional support for reticent men, right? If I mean, one of the first things I said to David was like, we're not going to use any hippy-dippy language. We're not going to use, you know, I really don't want any of that clinical stuff as well, I suppose, on the other end of that. But we normalize it as much as possible. So pretty much every table meets in a pub, in a private room where they can pretty much shut the door. The only cost for them is a meal and a beer. So we're normalizing it as much as we possibly can. And then the floor is open. You know, we have a couple of co-hosts who might start the table by being able to facilitate the space. After that, we ask everybody kind of to drop back in. But no judgment, no jargon, no fixing. It literally is, bare minimum is just turn up with a pair of ears.
I think it works because of what we hear men come with or come from, you know, what they step into it from. And there's themes. At the start of an entree, we just ask, why have you come tonight? We've created the confidential space, and then we ask, why have you come? And they start sharing their story. There's a whole lot of guys who have got mates, and one of the early guys who came to an entree said, I've got mates, but we just talk about footy and shit.
Yeah, and we went, that's gold.
We're going to use that. And we put that on our postcards.
Yeah.
We don't just talk about footy and shit. Yeah. So what he was saying is it's superficial. You know, the conversation just stays at that surface level. Other guys, they say, I've been flat out working, you know, doing my business or you know, working my career and raising kids, and I've put no effort into building really authentic friendships. Other guys say, I've moved. All my good mates are back where I left, either interstate or from another country, or, I've moved cities or whatever. Other guys are going through a major transition and they realise, shit, the only real confidant I had was, my wife or a female, a bestie, whatever. But they haven't ever created the environment where they can actually say what's really going on. So in those ways, it works because suddenly here's a place they can come and go, oh, wow, what a relief. I've got a place I can just be. I can just be myself and I can say what's really going on.
Do you find that people can open up more to strangers?
Totally.
Yeah.
One of the things we say is don't bring your A-team.
Yeah.
So don't bring your group of mates because you've got a relationship with them already that's going to set up at whatever, superficial level it might be set up at.
Yeah.
And it's hard for you to drop in because there might be a relationship with partners or wives, etc., that might cause difficulty.
fair.
So don't bring, it's easy. If you've got 11 other strange men you never met, you'll start identifying with them and they'll be at the table to identify with. But if you brought a whole cohort of mates, it wouldn't work.
You'd probably be a bit more reluctant to share as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So has there been a sort of common theme around guys that come in? Is it always the same sort of story?
It's as diverse as people's lives are, but there's
I imagine it would be. But
what you say, Ben, is, everyone is going through this in their own cycle. Someone might be riding high for years, but something will come toward them. We've had stories of guys who've joined tables, said, I joined, there wasn't anything major going on in my life. I just kind of had a sense it'd be a bit of insurance for the future. One guy said to us months after I joined the table with that mindset, which is, there was nothing major going on. He's standing at the morgue, identifying the body of his 14-year-old niece who had taken her life. Oh, fuck. And he said, I just realised right then, thank God I put that insurance in and I've got my men's table I can go to and talk about. So, there's all sorts of stuff, but it's the highs and lows that is the common pattern.
For sure, some kind of shit's coming towards you. Oh, you don't know what it is, but I guarantee you some kind of shit is coming around the corner. So as David said, why not have a group of blokes around you right now?
So you guys kicked off in 2011. What have you seen, I guess, trend-wise? Are you busier now than ever? Did it take a long time to gain traction? Because men, we're pretty famous for kind of locking up the feelings. We're always portrayed in movies and stuff as the tough guy that carries the burden, and my mind's kind of going to your Rambo, your He-Man, all that kind of stuff. I'll go out and sort it out my own. How long has this kind of taken to gain traction? And are you breaking down that kind of stoic kind of stereotype?
It's changed a lot. I think when we first started, we were fiddling around a little bit and, it was all a bit kind of strange for us. You got gin.
Time and place, mate.
Got gin in there, son.
It is water, I promise.
It's not that cucumber flavoured beer.
No, it wasn't.
No, bun me.
We've seen a big change probably in the last 3 or 4 years. Like there's a lot of work going on around men's stuff. There's a lot of new groups that are starting to set up and men are starting to talk. And I think we've seen men arrive at tables and we've just been blown away by the level. They just go boom, straight out.
Why do you think they can open up more recently?
I reckon there's definitely things that are playing out in society that are helping send the right signals to men that it's time to change. I mean, are you okay? Something like that, like have the conversation. Then, Buddy Franklin comes out and goes, guys, I'm struggling mentally, and he's one of those heroes, the Rambo sort of guys, So there's signals saying it's okay if you're not well mentally or if you've just got some shit you want to get off your chest or whatever. But then what's happening is guys are looking around and going, where do I have those conversations? So we've been talking to a guy from the Freemasons just to learn about how have they done it for 500 years. And they were a brotherhood environment. And then you had church groups all over the place and people used to do all of that. But now membership of these sort of more traditional places has way, way down. So guys don't have the traditional forums and yet and then there's these signals, hey, it's okay to start talking about what's really going on and it's okay not to be that blokey bloke. Like, forget that shit. Think of a different way of being a man by being more in touch with your feelings and being open. So I think those societal forces are definitely playing out. And we kind of popped up because we literally started this in 2019 in terms of taking it to others. We had the 7.5 years and then early 2019. So we've popped up at just a time in the zeitgeist, in the societal field, if you like, where maybe there's a growing need for places where you can talk openly.
That's really interesting what you've just said, and it's kind of to draw a parallel with the tennis player Osaka. What's her first name? What's the first name?
I've never watched a tennis match in my life.
The tennis player,
I know who you're talking about.
The tennis player, something Osaka came out this week and said about doing press conferences after post-game.
Yeah.
So she was open to doing them, but just post-game, she wasn't in a state to kind of talk about her winning or her losing or what have you, and yet being lambasted by the press, saying, well, you're sponsored, all that kind of stuff. So it's funny how we're trying to create safe spaces, but when someone actually comes out and goes, hey, look, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm probably not in the right space post-game or post a run or post a football game, whatever, that they go, no, that's actually against your contract.
Yeah.
I mean, how nuts is that?
It's so important. I mean, what we basically curate.
I think curate as well.
What's wrong with me this morning?
Were they Irish coffees?
I don't know what's going on here. So, and you're like me because I love a microphone normally, so it's really strange. We create safe emotional spaces where people can just get it out with no judgment, with nobody going, oh, yeah, mate, you think that's bad. You should listen to what happened to me. None of that. It's a safe emotional space. And I would imagine, those press conferences are pretty unsafe because you've just focused on hitting that ball whack and then some doofus at the back is going to ask you a stupid question.
Yeah. Targeted to get a rile out of you.
Yeah. It has
They've asked you that on purpose. You see in F1, kind of sorry, I don't watch tennis, but in F1, they ask something on purpose just to piss you off or to spark an emotion or something like that. And it's horrible,
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton came out recently saying we don't focus enough on the drivers that are coming up. They don't know how to talk in press conferences and we make examples out of them. These guys are just they're inexperienced and they don't know what they should be saying on, in a press conference, and they say the wrong thing. Yeah. As much as I disagree with a lot of Lewis Hamilton's decisions, I do agree with that. But yeah,
we'll bring that back before you go off on a tangent. I mean, how big are these tables? Because you keep going safe space, which I do love. But how do you balance that everybody has a voice at the table and doesn't perhaps find it confronting? Because we know walking into a networking group, if it's a big event, that can be very confronting for people. What's the size of these tables?
So each table is up to a maximum of 12 men.
Okay.
And they meet once a month on the same night. They meet in the same space. They start meeting around about 6:30 for a 7 o'clock sharp start. That's important because you'll probably have a man who's desperate to put something on the table straight away. And you don't want some clown walking in at 7:10. Oh, the traffic was bad and blah, 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 because our story's kind of gone then. Finish up at around about 9 o'clock, no kicking on. And we ask men to commit to 9 out of the 12 months. So it's about commitment, having that, that story that you can hear from another man and what's kind of going on and you're there for support. So we've started 31 tables.
Wow.
So we've got nearly 350 men sitting down once a month and talking about how they're feeling. And that's kind of important, is how do you feel? So when people talk about that, if I told you my views on the world, you could wildly disagree with me, go, mate, that's not wrong. If I tell you how I feel about the world, it's very different. You can't really disagree with me. So for instance, one of the guys that we know, brought up in a Catholic household, he feels massively let down by the Catholic Church. He's not having a go at them. His view of the Catholic Church, it might be so, but he talks about how he feels about, I feel massively let down by that. And that means that, blah, blah, blah.
And also you can't argue that. You're not trying to force an agenda. That's how you feel.
Yeah.
So you can, you can try and help someone rather than start having a go at them, which I think is a good thing. So walk me through the structure. So you arrive at 7.
Arrive at 6:30,
right.
Order a meal. Hopefully you'll get it all on the same buzzer.
So when you said you were the chef, I figured you were doing all the cooking. But then I know you had all the chapters. I was like, how are you getting round all of these tables?
Yeah, he's amazing. Take away King.
Exactly. Just drive the caravan around.
Sorry, I interrupted. So 6:30, order your food.
Order your food, and at 7 o'clock sharp start. And it literally, some of them run a little bit differently. They might have a check-in for 2 minutes all the way around and go, who's got something else deep they want to talk about. Some tables would just dive straight in and somebody will just start talking, say, I need this, blah, blah, blah. And then it will go off And ideally, it will go off like popcorn around the table, so we don't go you, because it just puts pressure on the next person, and that I find that really a painful thing. So we are very conscious of time. Some of the introverts, for instance, will often leave their run right to the end, and when it gets towards the end, they've run out of energy already. So they're like, "Oh, okay, I haven't got anything to really say." So it's really important that people have enough space, and that can be done very gently. You can say, "Look, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I know it's a real story. I'm just conscious that there are some other people here that might want to have something to say as well." And if a story is kind of rambling on a little bit, you can literally go, "Mate, I'm just really curious. How does that make you feel? How do you feel about that? I'm hearing your story, but what's really going on for you?" Because the story can go up here, it's all about the little details and what have you, but we want to know what's really happening.
Some good signs that a table is functioning well. There's a real mix of depth and laughter and lightness. If we visit tables once a year, once they're set up. They become self-organising, so we don't need to be there. But when we drop into a table, if there's laughter and congeniality, you can feel it, you can see it. It's healthy functioning. Another little indicator is can the group kind of just sit comfortably or at least sit in silence maybe after someone shared something profound? Is there the capacity for the group just to kind of be with that and just sort of sit? It's not common in social settings for us to be very comfortable sitting in a group and just allowing for silence, because it's like the room fills up. We fill up in that silence. It gets kind of almost not anxious, but there's a lot going on. But if a group is comfortable and is really practicing the quality of listening, you'll get these silences as well. They may only last for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, but it's a good indicator that, the group's really in tune with each other and they really are listening, not just jumping along to the next person, for example.
So do you have to leave your phones in a bowl?
Look, it's funny, we've never made a guideline or rule about phones, but I'm pretty sure most tables definitely have them away. And it really is noticeable. If someone's got a phone, when we visited, I've had a situation where someone's had the phone, he's been looking at it 2 or 3 times, and then he's got up. And that's not the vibe of how this works.
No,
it's like definitely phones away. So, we probably should have a little bowl, or at least encourage groups to consider that.
Because at least you're engaged the whole time. The worst thing is if you're in a conversation, you feel something vibrate in your pocket, just completely gets me out of whack.
It's I just want to go back to that silence thing. It's for any extrovert, silence can be excruciating. So it's almost like a real, and I've learned it myself, because I'll be like, oh, I might as well go then, or but it's just sitting in there in that silence, and it's what a lot of this to do is teaching men how to listen and just sit, and that really is so important. Yeah.
And how do you encourage an extrovert to keep a conversation going? I mean, I remember we had a chap on actually nearly a year ago called Dan Murray, who was speaking on the Zoom meetings, which I'm curious to know how you guys went through COVID. And he would always hang around a little bit. He'd be the last person to log off whenever he was doing a course, when he was doing a session, because people, when they turn up to a meeting, they put a face on. They put a show on for the cameras, even more so in Zoom. And he would hang around at the end to see who, just before they logged off, just kind of, drop their shoulders and got to go back to the office now, or got to go back to my desk, and I'm having a shit day. And then he would kind of reach out to them and just make sure they're okay. How do you do that in your vibe? And are people allowed to kind of get together outside of the catch-ups as well?
There's a lot that goes on in the table, but there's only so much can happen with a group of 10, 12 guys in say 2 hours a month. Life continues on. And so we really encourage groups to firstly get connected in a forum that they can chat outside the table. So we encourage them to get onto the Slack group and have their own private Slack channel, but also then they're in touch with men from across the network of tables. So that way, if something comes up, they can really, check in with each other, or just go, guys, that was intense, or I'm still processing what happened, last week, or whatever. So that kind of environment is good. And then some groups will naturally start to socialise. And it's not a social club, and we don't encourage this is where you're going to make friends and become a social group, because not everyone will become best mates. But well-functioning groups will naturally start to go, hey, guys, should we do something, outside of the table? Have a bowls night or go for a beer. Or we've had one group do a weekend away, and we suspect that will happen more as groups take, over time. That sort of check-in afterwards is really important in between months.
Did you get invited to the weekend away?
No, we didn't. Damn.
Look at the devastation on his face.
So what does a typical table look like?
It's got 4 legs, flat top.
Yeah.
I expected that from this bloke.
Boom, boom.
He beat you to it, mate.
Beat me to it. I need to
No,
cross that out.
so do we have like I'm a tradesperson. So do you have people from trades or business people? What does a typical table look like?
All sorts.
Yeah.
So our youngest member is a very brave 23-year-old.
Yeah.
Our oldest member is a sage 86-year-old. And it's a real diverse group of people who sit at tables from, tradies right through to, I think we've got 2 or 3 professors. We've got doctors, lawyers, self-employed, lots of expats who don't have that history. It's a really varied bunch. So we like to have diversity at tables. So that's not bringing your A team, but we want diversity for us looks like the man who's struggling with an autistic son sitting next to the guy who's an expat, hasn't got friends, many history with friends, sitting next to the guy who's gone bankrupt, sitting next to the guy who's self-employed, sitting next to the guy who's having a brilliant life right now. So that's what it looks like. So sitting next to the vets, the veteran, all that kind of stuff. And from that diversity, men will start to learn empathy. And you'll go, wow, I didn't know how tough it was to have an autistic son. And one of the important things is we talk about confidentiality. It's in the vault. And we used to go, that's a strict thing. Okay, that happens. However, what we realized after a while is, particularly with men who've got female partners, when they go home, the female partner's going to go, so how was it? What happened? How did you go? And what we talk about is the stories that you hear at the table aren't yours to share. They're not yours to share, but how you felt about that is yours to share. And that helps you have a different type of emotional conversation with your partner, because then you're talking about, wow, you have a bit more empathy because that guy who's got the autistic son, how tough is that? I didn't realize how tough it was. Or the guy who's having trouble with his teenage daughter is like, wow, that's terrible. I didn't realize that happened. So it's pretty diverse. We really ask for diversity around the table.
How do you and I don't want to coin this phrase, but how do you kind of judge success in this community? And that's not your why, but I guess, have you got any feedback of life-saving moments, or just a light bulb moment is probably what I'm looking for, of people have come to the community, they've been a part of it, and it's kind of quote unquote saved them, if I can put it that way.
Yep, I think there's a couple of layers to that. At the level of the table, success looks like, is it a safe place? That's it. Do people in that table feel safe? And we do a survey once a year, and we've got the results published on our website. And 95% of men say, yeah, it's a safe place to share. But in any individual table, last couple of weeks ago, I engaged with a group who had lost their way a bit. They were sort of moving into that first Barney. And it wasn't a safe place for everyone. For some, it was okay. For others, it wasn't. At the level of the individual, I guess, do they feel supported? Do they feel heard? And do they have kind of like a brotherhood they can lean on in a time of trouble? If something comes up, do they feel like they can put their hand up and those guys are going to be there and got their back? We had a situation this week where a guy didn't show up to a table, and the rest of the table noted that, reached out to him and had the conversation. He's deep in despair. He's going through shit. He's going through a really, really, really messy divorce. He's estranged from his kids, or at least it's really, that the access is very difficult. And the fact that they phoned and then they arranged to catch up with him the following week for lunch is gold. Okay, he's got mates probably, but are they the sort of guys who he's really able to share what's going on at the depths of his situation? These guys are. So that's a great example for that man of success. There's people there who are holding and supporting him and standing alongside him.
And that's a valid point you mentioned about the expat side of things, because when you do move to another country, you're leaving behind, we've spoken before on the show about it's a great opportunity to reinvent yourself and kind of almost be a new you. but you're also leaving behind.
What were you before, John?
It's a great conversation.
Anyway, how long have we got?
Exactly. I lost train of thought now. Expats, yeah. But to start again and have a community, because when you move, that's I would say a bit of a, whilst it's a peak, there's the trough at the end of the day, because you've just started a job, but you got no friends, so you're going home normally to a flat on your own. I mean, I was lucky I moved over here with my wife, but I can imagine you move over here on your own, that's the trough at the end of the day. So it's a nice community. You know, going through a divorce, I was reading on your website, you know, there's a chap that was going through a divorce. This was his safe space of a community as well. So I guess it's catching people when they're in that trough and supporting them there.
But before that, you know, put the insurance in place.
Yeah.
Because like we said, some kind of shit's coming towards you, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what that is. And that happens in many, many different ways. I don't want to be dark about it, but it could be a car crash. It could be something unexpected that happened.
Yeah.
So,
Did you get some reluctance at the start? I mean, feelings and, you know, warm and fuzzy, talking, being vulnerable is you wouldn't associate that with kind of masculinity, which I notice is on your postcard here. Did you get some reluctance around, she'll be right, you know?
There is reluctance.
I just wanted to jump back into the kind of how we validate it. We've been commissioned twice by the National Mental Health Commission, and it's very much about the value of peer work, of lived experience, and just particularly the difference between going to see a doctor who's got certificates behind him, or going to see a group of blokes we can just like normalize it and just get it out. So I just wanted to kind of get that in. It's a really important thing, and we're starting to see lived experience and peer work as a really important thing, particularly in emotional well-being and let's call it mental health. But what we deal with is very, very potentially low intensity mental health issues. Often when we'll say that to men are like, oh, well, I'm not mental. There's nothing wrong with me. But the fact of life is something will happen. So sorry, I just wanted to get that across. So we've had a few really big pats on the back from the National Mental Health Commission. Take this work seriously.
And the reluctance is there, definitely. I mean, we've got our, the guys who have inquired, and then the guys who are willing to take a call from somebody, one of our volunteer guys who are sitting at a table, they'll reach out and make an initial hi, just welcome, hi, any questions you've got. Then they get through to an entree. Well, we've got a stack of guys who have reached out to us on the website, and then they won't respond to a call or text. So they've already become reluctant. Then they've had a chat with somebody. Some other guys have had a chat with someone, really positive, but they haven't taken that next step to register to come and find out more about it, etc. And then for every guy who's hit our website, there's probably 100 who feel a bit stuck or feel like, oh, shit, life's a bit drab, or they just don't have those guys they can really talk to, but they're not getting off the couch. They're not clicking in to look for, okay, I need to find a men's group, or I need to find a place where I can chat. So that's all tied into these traditional versions of manhood that you talked about before, the Rambo. I'm all right. I've got my shit together. I don't need anyone. I'll get over it. All those things are going on in their head, and that's part of that blokey bloke thing. And I guess the guys that are stepping in are kind of going, okay, maybe I had that. Maybe that's how I used to see things, but maybe I've got to get over that. Maybe I just got to take a step. So, there's definitely different levels of reluctance. And what Ben just talked about, we're actually looking at is having just a peer-to-peer environment where it's just another guy down the street as your first contact point. Is that an easier access point for men than knocking on the front door of Beyond Blue or going to see a GP or a psych or somebody? And in fact, it's not just about mental health, like we've said. It's just about getting connected with other people.
I mean, thank you for that. I mean, Ben invited me to an event probably 2 months ago, and I didn't have a reluctance, but I was a bit like, I don't know what I can bring. And I guess that was probably my reluctance, because I'm a fixer as well and a problem solver and trying to help people from that side. And I was a bit like, I don't know. That was probably my reluctance, was what value am I going to bring to the table?
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone like me who wanted to come along but was like, I don't know where I fit in here? And who loves a networking event, by the way?
Everyone sitting at a table who's a kind of a functioning, committed member of the table, the biggest thing they do to contribute is simply showing up on the first Tuesday of the month, or if their group meets on the second Wednesday or whatever, is literally showing up on that night and sitting there, regardless of whether they've got anything themselves they have to deal with. Because, groups start to realise having the other men there is bloody brilliant. And that's what holds the group. So the greatest commitment and contribution a man makes is literally, as Ben said before, lending a pair of ears, just being there and available. And then, if you've got something going on, the next contribution you can make is to share that with an open heart, to go, let me tell you a bit about where I'm at right now. And that's the good and the bad, because sharing the joys and the highs and the wins is also great for the other guys. Guys can be shit and going through something terrible. We had one of the men at MT1, our table, went through a really, really, really bad situation. And yeah, he had to sludge through that and really, really, was grieving deeply. But at some points he told us it was so good just hearing some of the other stories of where life was going okay for you guys. It sort of helped me get back on my feet as well.
Do you have kind of counsellors on site, or so? I guess if you go really down the rabbit hole, or someone, I mean, you mentioned about everyone getting a voice, but I can imagine people would sense if someone really needs help. So. And one of the things that came to my mind this morning was, well, what happens if that conversation goes off? And again, no one's there to kind of save this person before they go, And it's like, I'll see you next week, Jimmy. I hope so, because Jesus, So do you have a kind of team that you can say, hey, look, thanks very much. You've shared your feelings. We're going to introduce you to this person to help.
We have something called the safety net.
Right.
And the safety net works like this. If you're walking down the road, I'll give you an analogy. If you're walking down the road and you see somebody with a broken leg, it's not your role to try and fix that leg, right? Because you can't fix that leg. It's your role to make that person as comfortable as possible and then call a professional. So that's the analogy we use at the table. So if you hear a man who's in real crisis, it's not your job to try and fix them, okay? It's your job to help them, make them feel as comfortable as possible. Literally put your arm around them. You might want to say, hey, mate, maybe we could go to the GP together. You might want to offer that. Often those conversations might happen not at the table, but in the car park afterwards. It might be you need to think about what's happening here. How you going, mate? All that kind of stuff. And then you think, if you sense something is not quite right, you might want to have a conversation that walking out of the room in the car park, because quite often men won't want to actually open up and really open up about that and break down in front of everybody. So, and when do you need to act on that? Something, I learned with some of the work I've done is you always need to act before you think you need to act. Okay. If you're leaving it too late, that's a bad thing. So nobody's going to really mind you putting a metaphorical arm around them and actually ask them, mate, how are you really going? What's really going? Nobody's going to mind that. But quite often men don't want to do that, because quite often if you tell somebody some bad news, you tell them how you feel, it's also how it lands with that other person. Like if you're down the pub and you're going, oh, boys, that's going to land a bit weird quite often. They're going to be watching the rugby league or whatever, and it's not the right. Yeah. So you've got to pick the moment to ask that person if they're okay, but always, ask it before you think you need to ask it. So, I mean, that's a bit of a, we haven't touched metal. We haven't really had a situation like that, but we are prepared for that. And then there are agencies that we can call and we'll organise that. One thing we haven't talked about is tell them the cost, son. So there's no cost to go into the men's table. The only cost, there's no memberships. The only cost is the price of a meal and a beer, if you choose to have a beer. So we wanted to set the bar as low as possible.
Yeah. And that's important because it opens up to everybody as well.
Yeah.
That's important. So what's the grand goal? I heard you refer to you as MT1.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of the testimonials on the website. They've got, now that makes sense actually. They've got MT different numbers. How many MTs are there?
31 right now.
And then what's the goal?
We set out early on. Within a few months, we started to get immediate validation from guys. Yeah, we want to do this. We want to start a table, and people already started saying this is going to really go. We had no idea of how quickly it was going to go. So we said, why don't we build this for 1,000 tables? If there's enough demand, we'll be ready for it, and we can sustain the support for all the tables. And if you can build an organisation for 1,000 tables, if there's demand for 10,000, well, we're well on the way to that. So we sort of thought, let's be available for as many men who want to be in this as possible.
And we've had validation all over the place. So we recently won a grant from Resilience New South Wales to build 10 tables in bushfire affected regions.
Wow.
So there's a lot happening for us, which is very exciting.
As the terms like empathy and resilience, I mean, you go on LinkedIn now; they're all over the place under various memes. Has that helped you guys, or are they becoming cliche terms now where people don't just really?
I struggle a little bit, and I think David has some views on this. I struggle with the word resilience a little bit because I think what are you in the corporate world, right? What are they making you resilient against? All the shit that's come towards you, and it's an individual thing. So, and David certainly talked about resilience is really you need a team, you need a group, you need a community to be resilient. So, resilience is. Something I'm not too sure about that word, whether that's right or not, because at the end of the day, you can adapt. Maybe it's an adaptation of adapting to opening up. You've never done this before, but you're adapting. You're not making yourself resilient. You haven't got the armor on. I'm resilient kind of thing. So yeah.
Our tagline on the back of the postcard and really our purpose is healthy men, healthy masculinities, healthy communities. And for us, that encompasses empathy, resilience, a whole range of things. But yeah, as we said, the communities piece is a real sleeper in this. When we first set out, we thought, we're here to help men, and of course we are. But we're actually almost working countercultural because all of the cultural signals we get, particularly in marketing and media, is just go it alone. Buy this and you'll be sorted. It's dog eat dog. Just it's in the competition game. And we're going, hang on a minute, life is so much better if we just are a part of a community and a healthy functioning community. So let's build healthy communities because that supports the individual man. And then as it turns out, we're also doing this work, which is again countercultural against this idea of toxic masculinity where, men are shit, men don't do this and don't do that. So, let's put a focus on being a healthy masculine. Like, what does that look like? And it's qualities of, being able to listen, being able to share emotion, being in touch with your emotions, having empathy for others. Those kind of qualities alongside being strong when you need to, being able to pick up the piano and move it, when it needs to be done.
You can pick up a piano?
Can't you?
It's a little Casio one.
What's wrong with you guys? They're from England, mate.
Yeah, right.
we have baby grand, thank you. Are women allowed around the table?
We say anyone is welcome who identifies as a man. We don't have a transgender man yet at a table, but I'm sure we're going to end up with one. But anyone who identifies as a man is welcome. Women are amazing supporters of this work and always have been from day one. They can see it. They can see men need to open up. They can see men need to connect with other men. So we've got many men sitting at tables because their wife or their partner or their sister told them, hey, check this out, or you need to go to this. So they're great supporters, but no, they're not at the tables.
Okay.
So when COVID kicked in, I'd imagine catching up for dinner would have been a bit of a concern. How did COVID look like for the men's table?
We actually thought we were going to be really busy. We were actually we were busy, but we didn't have as many inquiries as we thought. So we went onto the Zoom, and the meetings were on Zoom, but it was really a C- or a D+. It wasn't the same. So, our values are sitting at the table, and the table is very iconic, right? You have a meal, you have your conversations. That's where it works. It's very hard to have that if, some guy's got his wife walking behind him or the kids are rumbling around in the next room and it's all kind of bedlam happening in the house. We got through it. I hope we don't go back to that again. No, it's really having a meal. If you put food in front of a man, you're going to get more out of them, right? It's dead simple.
That's fair. Much more agreeable.
It absolutely works. And it's a bit of a distraction, right? So, there's that little distraction as well. But the Zoom meetings were, not a big fan, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can't stand Zoom meetings. I'm just not engaged with them. I just can't connect. It's horrible. Still on COVID, I'd imagine that the need for the men's table would have been a lot higher during COVID as well. Did you see like sort of changes in mental health coming through the COVID, or did you see people reaching out a lot more, but you couldn't really get to them? And
It's happening now.
yeah,
It's not, and there are some regions that have bushfires, floods, fire, drought, etc.
we got it all in Australia.
Yeah, when that's happening, that's probably not the time for the men's table because, for instance, the floods, they're too busy getting the mud out of their house and getting their lives back together. What happens after, 4, 5, 6 months after is when. So right now we're seeing a huge amount of inquiries.
Yeah,
and that's the fallout from last year, and the floods of earlier on. So it doesn't happen when the crisis is happening. It happens a little bit later when people go, whoa.
Talk to me about this model of care that you have on your website.
So we
tried to download it, but I had to sign up for a newsletter and all that. I thought I'd just talk to you about it today.
No worries. We encourage anyone. They're not going to get spammed. We had a really fortuitous meeting with the CEO of National Mental Health Commission, and we were only 6 months in or something. And we were hoping they'd give us money. And she said, you need to develop a model of care. You need to get some evidence. And we thought we'd sort of failed in the meeting, walked out, oh, God, bloody evidence. And anyway, we were commissioned by them to do that study. And we are so glad we did because it's true that when you do get evidence and data, it helps you clarify how does this actually work. But also you've got the figures to say, yes, this works in these ways, and men are saying this about it. And we did a women's focus group as a part of that research as well, and women are saying this about it. And so we put it all together. We were fortunate to get support from a consultant who's done this work for many years, and she was fabulous to really help us see how do you still put it into as a story, but bring the data in and have it with a bit of kind of scientific rigor, I guess. And so we were just really, really grateful.
Mrs. Wolf.
Mrs. Wolf,
Mr. Wolf, from the, what's it?
Reservoir Dogs?
Reservoir Dog. She's Mrs. Wolf.
Well, she gets things done is the point.
My God.
She's brilliant. She's an action woman. So I think for us now, we stand by, we want to keep doing more research. So we're in another project now where we're looking at this help seeking, this reluctance that men have to put their hand up and go, hey, time to get something going here, time to take some action. And does it make a difference to have just a guy down the street at another table available for an initial check-in to meet them and make it easier? So that's the second bit of research. And we think ongoingly, we're probably going to want to keep doing research in different ways to understand more about men, how do we support each other, what's happening in the zeitgeist around things like masculinity and so on. There's going to be plenty for us to look into.
It's a very strange thing. One of my soapbox thing is if you look at the stats, what happens for men, the suicide stats, we pretty much all know those, male-on-male violence, domestic violence, the amount of men in prison, just general stuff that goes on for men. And then we're told the story that, we have privilege, and yes, we do have privilege. There is that, but you then look at the stats and go, hold on a minute, there's something strange happening here. And I think, I'm a big believer that we've got a small percentage of men who just give us such a terrible name. I watch the news and I see some idiot has done something to a woman, monstrous, and we won't deny that doesn't happen. But it isn't all of us, right? Mm-hmm. But what happens is that kind of guy probably starts in the playground when the big alpha male's coming around and whacking people and he's got his little cowardly friends around him. And most men will go, and I'm pretty mouthy, so I was like, rah, 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 whatever. And it didn't worry me that much. But you'd see other people who'd really kind of suffer, and keep their head down. And that kind of happens throughout the male hierarchical thing, particularly in the corporate world. So, it's very much that healthy masculinity is so important. How do we overcome that kind of problem where we are put in that light sometimes where all men are bad? Is we all need to stand up and model what it is to be a good man. It's so important because that's where the changes will come. When we see the domestic violence stuff happening, it's like all men need to stand up against that. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to engage when the conversation is around toxic masculinity because as a man myself, when I hear that, I'm like, oh, how do I engage with this? I can't engage with that.
Yeah, I hate that term.
So how we can engage is healthy men, healthy masculinities, healthy communities. And we will push that as that positive framing of being a man all the time.
I've not heard the term toxic masculinity.
Really?
No, not yet. No,
Where have you been?
I know, right?
maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't watch a lot of the news anymore for obvious reasons.
yeah,
but,
fair
but
enough.
so can you give me some points on toxic masculinity?
I mean, in a way, we do try to stay away from the
Yeah, we do.
conversation and move it toward healthy because it's a label that is attributed to these men that do behave badly, and we're not saying they
I
don't.
prefer that.
But it's like, let's put a focus on where most men want to be, which is healthy versions of being a human being.
Yeah. So do you guys have, how do you create that role model then? So I like what you just said around saying, being a healthy man, healthy masculinity, but how do you create, what does that look like for someone that's perhaps, not there yet? How do you give them that vision?
I mean, if I can just share a story, with one of our young guys, he's just come into a table, so touched by his openness and vulnerability, even in an entree. And we do some of the entrees on Zoom to introduce men to the concept, and then they go to a face-to-face table. So he was on Zoom. He was saying, I'm in my late 20s. I just want to learn to be about being a good man, and I want role models around me. And so he's looking for men who are able to express what's really going on, to be like authentic, if you like, to be open and honest, to be able to listen to him, And we saw that on the night, like at the end in the checkout of that session, he was sort of going, well, I feel like this is a great environment where I can learn from you great guys. And the oldest guy on the call, he was in his late 70s. He said, mate, you are teaching us as well by your willingness to be so open and honest with us. And so there was already that exchange. And the fact that he got the validation from the older guy was in part another bit of role modeling, getting positive feedback, getting affirmed. So I think it's always there. And a lot of guys will say that, there's a normalizing effect of the table. No matter what they're going through, hearing other men's stories and just being part of a process, which is a level playing field where each person takes a turn and they all get to listen and share. There's a normalizing about that. It helps us all to just be comfortable in our own skin.
That's a massive point. I'd probably discounted that, where you get the older generations learning from the younger generations, because of course that's where a lot of, I guess, some of the traditional ways of they've kind of been embedded for years and generations and stuff. So that's a huge point.
We've had guys at tables, in their 60s, 70s, and they've said, I've never experienced anything like this before. I've never been in an environment where people have been so open and honest, and it's a revelation for them. And it's almost, there's a little bit, possibly a bit of grief there around that they haven't had this before. So in fact, one of the guys at our third table, he said, I've been waiting 69 years for this. I've been waiting this long that I could find this kind of thing where I can just get stuff out, and people aren't going to jump in and go, oh, mate, you should do that. Oh, mate, you should do this. Just get it out on the table.
So how are you scaling this? Because, you guys obviously have the initial vision and desire, hunger to get awareness on the go and in the press and out and about, but you can't be at every single meet. So how would someone start it, and are they vetted? If it's like, okay, I don't think you can actually run this. Like, how does that process work?
Yep. So new tables start in local areas once a small group of men, or it can just be one guy who goes, I'd really love to be part of starting a group in my local area. We say, great, find at least one other man, and ideally 2 or 3 other men who are willing to collaborate with you. And sometimes they'll come through, the website and through our network where they happen to live close, and we just introduce randoms to each other, go, you all are interested in a table in your area. Why don't you meet each other and get started? Then we have a kind of a seeding and curating process where men are invited in. Normally there's an entree date set, 8 weeks, 10 weeks out after that initial conversation with those starting guys. And that's an online registered event. They pay. That's the only time they pay up front, $35 for a meal and a drink. And that way guys can make a decision. Yeah, I'll come and check that out. And there's no obligation for them to have to do anything after that night. That way we get 12, 16 men into the room at that local venue, always a private room of a pub or a restaurant. And we do the entree, we introduce them to the fundamentals and the safety net. Here's how it works. We tell a few stories that we've learned from other tables. And then the guys that want to continue, they basically say, well, I'm coming back next month. Then we work alongside a few of the guys, often those starting guys or others who put their hand up. We call them co-hosts, and they kind of just got an initiating role just to support the culture and the foundation setting of the table. They don't have any authority. It's as Ben said, it's a level playing field, but they just keeping an eye out for, are we kind of learning to behave and act alongside each other around the fundamentals and the safety net, and the groups become self-organising literally the next month.
And are they run for profit, or is it literally just literally it's the time that they're investing?
Yeah, it's just the time. As we said, there's nothing to pay apart from a meal and a drink. Yeah. It's a grassroots activity held together simply by each man's commitment to each other, to that table.
Yeah.
And it's funded through grant writing, so we write grants to, support this.
Yeah. And have you got some sponsors on board as well that help?
We've decided, it's never going to be the men's table sponsored by. So no. Yeah. So we run a very clean operation, and we're not beholden to anybody. Yeah. And that's the way we envisage it always will be, as long as we're in charge.
Yeah, cool.
I think so.
But we're definitely up for. I mean, we've got 3 levels of government putting money in: a federal, state, and council. We'd love to get more philanthropic money, from wealthy benefactors, from people who kind of get it. And are at a stage in their life where they want to start contributing, because the thing with all the government levels is it's all tied to outcomes, which is fine. You got to deliver, this many tables or do this. But there's also the running costs. We're building a team, and they need to be paid in order to go out and drive this into the regions, into different states and so on. And so we're a fast-growing startup social enterprise. We need money coming in, and that philanthropic channel is going to be really important to us. So putting a call out to your listeners. Who knows? Maybe one of them is in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and this is one of the ideas of getting people on the platform. You mentioned interstate, so you're New South Wales at the moment?
Mostly New South Wales. We have one in Melbourne, and we have one in Launceston, and believe it or not, we've got one in Washington State in America.
No way.
So that's the first of many over there, we hope.
How did that come about?
David?
One of the guys in the local community here has a professional international network, and he posted our model of care. And they do similar. They're a different kind of a group, but they're focused on group dynamics and how do you make healthy functioning groups. And this guy over there saw it and hit us up straight away. And he loves group dynamics and healthy functioning groups, and he happens to also love food and the relationship between food and good group stuff. And so he's a cool dude with a great big beard and just said, let's do this. So he went off and found some guys, and they got started, and we kicked them off just a couple of months ago. We're not rushing yet into the States because that's a whole new growth stage. We want to definitely be right across Australia first. Yeah.
Nice.
There you go. So if anyone is out there in interstate that wants to get involved in a men's table, then reach out to these guys as well. Guys, we're coming towards the end of the session. So I'm going to ask my question that I normally ask, and I'm going to let you drive on your answer, okay? Because you might not want to have dinner together. But the question is, you've got dinner table booked for 4. Would you like to have dinner together so you can invite 2 guests, or do you want to have dinner on your own and you can invite 3 guests, and David, you can invite 3 guests? How do you want to play this?
And so the question is, who would we invite?
So the question is, who would you invite and why? But because it's only a booking for 4, you can either choose to dine together and have 2 guests, or you can go, right, we're having a night off each other and go the other way.
Dead or alive?
Okay.
I wouldn't invite him.
Speaking of, well, in all fairness, that was nearly 10 seconds of silence. So you guys are very comfortable with each other as well.
Yeah. No, I spend a lot of time with him.
Okay, so you can invite 3 guests then, Ben. Who would they be?
Oh, who would they be? Oh, God. Okay. Bugs Bunny, I think, probably would be one.
I thought it'd be sweet.
Yeah.
First time that's come up.
Easy menu, carrots.
Yeah, there you go. Wouldn't have to cook. Yeah. Who else? God. Janice Peterson, who reads the news on SBS.
Yeah.
Who else? God, I don't know. Oh, I'm stuck. I'll come back to me.
You
I've
better
got
have
2.
3 good ones. You've had so much time to think. Come on.
Gee,
Under pressure.
What was your 4th one? Did you?
I haven't got a 4th one. I've got Bugs Bunny and Janice Peterson.
All right, we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
You have a bit of thinking
Who
time.
would you go, David?
Look, I would definitely want to have my wife there, because I think, anytime you have... There you go, see? I cued him.
Yeah, big time. Set him up.
Yeah.
You two are
Sorry,
in separate,
Julie.
You two in separate cars on the way home.
No, exactly. Sorry, Julie.
because I think sharing, great experiences, like dinner or anything, it's just so nice to share it with your intimate partner. I think for me, historical figures that have genuinely been transformative in the world really, really fascinate me, not just from what they did, but like who they were being. So, Nelson Mandela and Gandhi are two men who I've got immense respect for and have been learning a lot just simply by reading about them and their stories. And to be in their presence would be awesome. But then that would kind of mix up the gender. You'd have 3 blokes and one woman there. So maybe I'd go for a woman. I mean, someone like a Mother Teresa, I bet she wouldn't say much. She probably wouldn't even want to sit down to dinner because she seemed like an action woman who just was always doing stuff. But to be in her presence, somebody like that, and just, I reckon we learn so much through osmosis, through the feel of somebody. And so I think to be in the presence of someone like her would be pretty awesome as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And your fourth would be?
Well, it has to be Julie, doesn't it?
I love the fact you said about learning through osmosis. It's one of my things I love to do. Yeah. And one of the reasons we put the podcast on as well.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, gents, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Can I just say, please have a look at our website, because if men want to come along, they can just literally sign up, and we have what we'll call entree dates. We've got one coming up in Melbourne. We've got some coming Kiama, Manly. They're online as well. So wherever you are, you can join us. Next one is 8th of June, isn't it? The online Zoom, or is that 9th?
9th of June, yeah.
And then the 13th of July.
There'll always be plenty of options online.
And what's the link?
themenstable.org.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, gents.
Thanks very much.
Love your work, guys.
Enjoy the rest of the weekend as well. Thank you very much for coming on and give us your Saturday morning. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Well done.
Yeah, great work.